In this video, we're going to focus on how to correctly filter dates in Chartjs. So right now we have here, and we can see here, if we select this, we filter, and then we can change it. It will grab here the default values as well. We can put it back here, or let's expand that to 7 November here. Now it starts to work again nicely, and then let's put it back to 6 November. You can see it changes, and if we reset it again, it goes back here. And then of course what we could do here, we can go back here to 1, and we can change that, or filter this one again, reset it again, and we could do all kind of options here. So let's start to explore how to do this. In this video, we're going to focus on how to filter dates in a chart in Chartjs. So this was basically based on a other video here, which was about how to filter a chart between dates in Chartjs. This video is quite popular, and one thing I wanted to address was one of the comments I had here below, which was correctly at the time, but I couldn't figure it out. So basically here, Fahmi Abdillah asked or said the following: the real world filter is not like that. It's a bad filter. We need to change the date time to value of and filter, and then using these certain if statement commands. So eventually I responded, that's correct, but I'm not able to create the same or the same structure because it doesn't work in Chartjs. So eventually here, I did said that, and this is almost 2 months ago, that I will research this, and finally I figured it out and understand how it all works. So once you understand it, it becomes more logical, and then now what we're going to do is do the correct way of doing it. So what I'm going to do here now is going to show you the correct way of how to filter the dates and why it at this time here, when I tried it on here, it didn't work as what I was hoping for. So let's start and work on this right now. So for this, we're going to create a bar chart, and we need to go here to get the default code. Go to chartjs3.com, getting started. For some reason, I get this weird error here. However, on Firefox, it works fine. Anyway, so if I scroll down here, I'm going to copy this code here. And this code is basically our default code. And if you want to understand what this code does, please check out this specific video here. I'm going to paste this in here, and then once I paste it, I'm going to cut it out and move this in here. So that's the title for me. Save that, and then I refresh here. Alright, so now we have basically a basic chart here. And what we want to do next is to simplify. I will reduce the colors. We don't need multiple colors, we only have one single color, and then after we're going to play with the dates in here. So if I scroll down here, we're going to do a few things. First of all, let's remove all the excess colors here, except for the red one, or the first value in here, which is a red color. Then we do exactly the same here for the border colors. And if we save this, now you can see we have only one single color. Alright, so next what I want to do is I want to put in here the dates in here. So we're going to create here new constants, and this constant will be called, let's call this the constant of dates. And the dates will replace the labels eventually. So for this, what I'm going to do here is very straightforward. I'm going to just say here, let's count for the week. So let's assume right now it's in November, so we say 2000 November, and then 01. And then we have the next one would basically be the same here. So I'm going to copy this, and then after I'm going to show you what we're going to do with that, because we have to do some adjustments. Alright, so we have this, let's count them up, incremental, all up to 7 November, so we have 7 days in a week. So once we have these, we can now semicolon this, and if you would do like this, it still works fine. However, if we save this and refresh, the dates are fine here, but in reality, this is what I did in the previous video. This is not a real date. While it is a date in the eye of the user, it's not the date in the eye of the JavaScript commands, because it sees this as a string. And this is the reason why when I was trying to filter, it couldn't filter it, because it was filtering a string instead of filtering a date. It doesn't understand that this is a date. So what we need to do here eventually is convert this into a date. That we will do afterwards. First, what we're going to do here, next one is just to get the data points in here, which is basically this here. I'll just say this will be the constant of data points. This will be data points as well, of course, referring to that. Alright, so we have this here now. If I save this, refresh, everything still looks same, beautiful. But what we need to do here eventually is this. So I'm going to show you how can we compare this, because this right now is a string. How do we convert this into a a number. Basically what we're going to do, and this is with dates in JavaScript, it calculates it in numbers based on milliseconds. So the amount of milliseconds will convert into a date, because it will calculate based on a specific date. It starts at 1971 January. So that's the date. It's very similar to Excel, and then just counts up. Why that specific date? I'm not sure. Maybe computers at that time was starting to do these kind of databases, but I do not know the history of that. However, what we're going to do here is, let's do here console log. And here, all we need to do here to convert a date string into a date number, is basically you say here new date with capital D, and then here I'm going to put in, we can remove this because this is already a string. If I do like this, this is not 100% accurate, but let me show you exactly what happens. If I save this here now, refresh, open up my developer tab, you can see here what's happening. Right now it shows you what is the date that we selected, and it also shows you the time here, and the time according to this is 8 a.m. in the morning based on Greenwich Mean Time. So GMT stands for Greenwich Mean Time, and Greenwich Mean Time is basically somewhere in the UK, or if I'm not mistaken, it's a Greenwich, it's a place in UK where they start counting, and there the counts start at 0. Basically the hour difference is 0, and I am here in a different time zone, and this time zone is plus 8 hours. So it's 8 hours advanced compared to the city in Greenwich in UK. So that's basically what it really means. So you can see here Philippine Standard Time, which is the location where I'm located. So what we're going to do here now is basically, this is fine, but I don't want the 8 a.m. here, because I want to start at the very beginning, because if I do this, you will see here, you'll get a slight issue. So I'm going to copy this. We'll put it in here. We save this, refresh. You can see here somehow, alright, so it works now fine. Wait, and so what I'm going to do here first, I think that is probably the best. Let's convert this in a proper time structure. To do this, we need to work with the scales. And what we're going to do in the scales, we're going to say here the X scales is now going to have a time-bounded connection. So what we're going to say here, we say type equals time, comma, and this is basically the object. And I realized before we even should do that, I need to get the script for this, the time adapter. So let's get that first, or else we will get an error by default. Alright, so to find that, we're going to get the adapter. You can go to chartjs3.org, and then in here we have the ecosystem. Select that option here, and then in here, if you scroll down, you will find here the adapters. Click on the adapters, and then you have 3 options. Don't use this one. This one is deprecated, meaning that it's not being up, or it hasn't been innovated anymore. It will be up, or not really updated, but they will keep on maintaining it for as long as it requires, but they will not do any new updates and developments, and most likely this will probably be stopped completely. Loxon is fine. I prefer datefns for the adapter. Why? Because we only need 1 JavaScript. If you're going to use Loxon, you will need 2 specific JavaScripts to add. So that's why this one is easier to use if you need Loxon for certain developments. But if you only need to have the datefns or the adapter link, go for datefns. So I'm going to grab this one here, and if we scroll down here, and what we're going to look is this specific adapter datefns. That's the one we need. Just copy this, and once we copy that, we're going to make sure that this is in here. Alright, so now we have it in here. So if I save this now, then let's make sure that this is again big. Alright, so it does something, but of course not anything what we want. So let's scroll down here and solve this. Because basically regarding to the time, we had this one here. So let me just undo this so you see how it will work. Alright, so it still works fine. It just looks like original. Nothing has happened because we didn't change anything yet. So now we're going to say here, we will say date will be time, and then this time here is a new object. So we say time, and in here we'll say the unit will be divided into day, because we have multiple days. So save that, make sure you have a comma here for the X and Y. Alright, refresh, and now you can see here what's happening, and this is why we need to reset it now, because you can see here the time difference with the 8 a.m. is creating an issue because we're missing now the 1 November label, and this is because of this here. And this was the issue when I had before. We had to convert this scale into a time scale to recognize that we're working with dates. That's why the other video didn't have that structure. So now what we're going to do now is just let's get that to the original, and I'm going to show you 2 ways to do it, because you might have what we're doing here right now is nice, but this is a customization in the array. I can imagine in your case, maybe you get an array from PHP or from your database, and you cannot add these here between because maybe it's a list of 100 items. Don't worry, we're going to solve it. I'm going to show you how to automate this, but I want to just make sure my point is clear. So what we're going to do here basically is this. How do we solve this issue here? In essence, we have to do this. Here in this date, we're going to say 00, colon, 00, colon, 00, which stands for hour, minutes, and seconds. Then we say space, and then we say GMT, Greenwich Mean Time, plus. And I say Greenwich, but you write Greenwich. If I'm not mistaken, it's Greenwich. That's the city, but we pronounce Greenwich. Alright, so we have the Greenwich Mean Time. Alright, enough history lessons. And then we say here plus 0, 8 for 8 hours, 0, 0. So if we save this now, refresh, we can see here now, this is still being considered as 8 a.m. However, here it is now recognized. So let's see here, because why? This one here had to be like this. So if I copy this all, put it in here, now it will reset it to the local time here at 12 midnight. Beautiful. And now we have also our label here showing. So we have this here, but of course this is not what you want to do if you have too many items, because you would have to manually adjust everything, and I don't want that, so we're going to systemize that. So let's start. So we save this here again, go put it back here. Alright, so this is all fine here right now, and somehow it just now start to recognize. However, don't worry about it, we're going to work on a loop to make sure that this is really working. So what we need to do is basically the following. We're going to put in here inputs. We're going to put in 2 inputs where we can select a between. And what we will have eventually is a filter and then a reset button as well. So we're going to say here input type equals date. And this, let's say this will be start. And then we have another one here, will be end. And then we have here the button, and this button here will basically be on click, and then here filter date. You can do it like that, filter date function. Alright, there's a filter, and finally we have another button which I'll make a break, and in that button we're going to put a reset. So we say here reset date to original state. Alright, so we say here as well reset. So what we're going to do here, let's refresh here. Now we have all of these options here. Beautiful. Of course, nothing works yet. What we want to do here is to ensure that we have a selection that we allow. What we must have here is to put in here the selection as well. So we're going to say here a minimum. So this is minimum here. Let's say here 2021 11 November. Oh, sorry, 1 November. Of course. And then we have here another one is a max. And the max would be the date, highest date we have here, which is this one here. Put it in there. Alright, so that's the ultimate max. And then another one here on the filter. Basically, they should be somehow connected to each other. But for now, it doesn't matter so much. Or what we could do here, maybe, let's say the maximum should be 3. And this here should minimum be, well, we can say your minimum is 4. That's alright, and maximum is 7. So we restrict our selection to a certain amount. However, you already get the structure what we are going to do here. So we say your value, the default value I will put in here would be 5 November. That's it. And here, the default value will be 2 November. So meaning that if we save this, refresh, you can see here, we already get the selection. If we select this, we can select 1 up till 7, or our lowest one would be 4, and this one would be, maybe the max would be 3. So we have these here. Alright, so now we have this. What I want to do eventually is here, because we need to work with the filter. It's time to filter the dates. But what I want to do with the filtering of the dates, there's 2 things. We have to look through this array here properly. that it will be readable in JavaScript in this exact structure, or else we'll get an error as well. So that's what we're going to do now. So first of all, let's go in here. And then in here, we're going to say function. What is the function name? Filter date. So we're going to grab that. Filter date. And then we have this one here. And then that's it. All right. So what we're going to do here is the following. We're going to have here what we say here, the starting date. That is, let's see, where are you? This is the input. The input would be here. I guess we can maybe give this an ID. Let's say ID start. Then I have another ID, and this ID equals ID end. Very straightforward. So nothing fancy here, because now we can just extract those specific IDs here. So say constant start equals document dot get element by ID, and then here of course start. All right, so we have another one here, and this will be end. So once we have this, what we need to do, as I indicated, we need to convert this eventually into a proper structure or the proper date. So if I say here dot value, we can already do this, dot value, and here as well dot value. What we want to do eventually here is very similar to this. So I'm going to copy this already, because we're going to grab this and we just convert it immediately into a date. So what we're going to do here, we say just new date, and then we just convert this item into a date. You will notice that this doesn't mean that it is still complete, because it didn't have yet this item here. However, don't worry, I'm going to show you so you have an understanding of this, because this is really important. This is the reason why I struggled before to figure out why it didn't work, because I didn't have a good understanding of the time structuring in JavaScript. So if I do here console log, and then we say here start, let's see what happens now. Refresh, alright, and then just press the button of filter. And what is happening now? Alright, so it grabs now the November 2, which is the starting date. It grabs it here, Tuesday, and it shows everything we have here, exactly as what we want. So that's correct, because this was November 2 was the default. So if I do this, and then I do not reset, but filter, it should get now Monday, November 1. There you are. However, still an issue here. The hours is now on 8 AM in the morning. It should be reset back to midnight at GTM 8. Alright, so that's what we're going to do right now. So how do we reset this? So for this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to change this and just say here number 1, because then here I'm going to do something else. We're going to now assign basically the ending point of this part now to our time here. So we say the following. Let's say here constant start equals, we're going to grab this specific date, and then we're going to say we want to reset this specific date. So we say set hours, and the set hours will be very simple, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0. Alright, so back to midnight. So if I save this now, you can see here we have this start, so the console log will show correctly now. Let's filter, and you can see here now we get what exactly. We don't get any more our the presentation of the date, but we get now in milliseconds. So this is in milliseconds, and this is exactly what I said before. How does JavaScript can read our data here? Well, we have to convert it into a structure, and now we can compare. And later on, we're going to loop through all of these, and then you will see this is the same. Basically, this here is exactly the same as well, but this is just converted into a different visual representation. Right now, it is just in milliseconds, and this is very useful because JavaScript can understand this and can convert this easily into a date, year, etc., etc. It knows exactly what to do with it. So basically, it's a universal way of converting time into any other time item, year, month, day, hours, seconds, etc., etc. Because this is a standard unit. Alright, which is milliseconds, by the way. So the milliseconds converts into seconds, converts into minutes, etc., etc. Alright, so now you get this. You understand this concept now. I think I've talked a lot about this. We can now continue on, but then do exactly the same. End one. And then we say here, this will be end. We can just remove this one now. Make sure that this here is end number 1. Here we say end. And then we say here, end number 1. Alright, so we have this here now. This has been now converted as well correctly. So what we're going to do next, And the next part is basically filtering our dates here. This now must be converted from a string into a proper time structure or milliseconds. So what we're going to do here is the following. We're going to say here constant. I'm going to give here filter date, which is in this case, or let's say filter dates. I don't want to use the same name as the function, that might be confusing. Filter dates is based on this one here, the dates. I want to duplicate this because I don't want to adjust the original array. If I adjust the original array, I have a problem in the near future if I want to reset or change the data or change the filtering. So we need to always have the original intact, but we just get a duplication of it. And that's what we're going to use. So we say here the following. What we're going to do here is equal. Oh, I guess I realize I forget something, sorry. Because we didn't convert it yet. So let's start to convert these dates first. Let's go in here. Alright, so I'm looking at my notes and I realize that I'm forgetting this one. And this is very important. So we say a constant. And then what I wanted to do was not the dates here, but I would say you converted dates. So this is basically the reason what I just referred to. We need to make sure we have a duplication of it. So we're going to duplicate this. But how am I going to duplicate it? I'm going to go through a map array. So the map method will loop through an array, and then it will do a certain command like a for loop, very similar. Basically what I want to do is I want to have this, but I want to convert this into this structure. To do that, I have basically this structuring code. Oh, that's what we need. I'm going to show you here. So let's start to do this one. Because here what we did, exactly was converting it. Now we're going to do it in a loop. Alright. So where are we? There we are. What we're going to do is the following. We will say here, we're going to have this because this is the new array that we're going to work with. But we're going to grab the dates here. This is the default item where we want to loop through every item. So we say map, and in this map we will say the following. We will say date, and why I say here date, right now in array the dates basically is this array here, and then the date here is just a name we give for every individual value. It's like a for each or a value key in the array that you can give it a specific item if you loop through it. So what we just say here basically is this date, which is the most descriptive version of this array here because it's a single date. Then we say here the following. Once we have this date, what we want to do here is create a function, and this function does the following. We will say here new date, it's capital D, alright, and then we grab here the value. So remember this value here is basically now this, because this equals that. So we say this, you could almost imagine like this, is that, so in here, and then we say here dot, and what are we going to do here? Let's go down here, look at this, set hours, grab this one. Then we have here the set hours. We set this back to 0 or a number format. And once we did this, basically we're done. Semicolon here. And all we can do here is just to get the converted dates. We say console.log. Make sure we get the converted dates here. Put it in there. If I save this now and refresh, you will see here now we have these converted dates. And they are all numbers. These are all milliseconds. So now comparison of this is perfect and easy to do. Because now the comparison is not anymore string, but numbers, and now it's easy to work with. Alright, this here was the one that I wanted, so this is very essential. Let's scroll down here, and then we're going here, and all we're going to say here is again the filtered dates. Filter dates is basically the items that we want to filter based on the conditions that you have here above. So we say here the following equals converted dates and dot filter. So now we can use the filter. Before I couldn't use the filter because we didn't convert it into a number format because it was a date which was a string. So this is basically what we just did here, explains why before in the other video I couldn't figure it out. So what we have here, the following. Then we say here, very similar to the map, every single date we have, you want to use a function, and this function is basically an if statement where we have a comparison. We want to filter the date if. Alright, so now we have the if the date value, the date, which is basically this here, or all of these here that we are filtering through, is larger or equal to the starting date. Which makes sense, because if you want to filter here, we want to filter the second one, that means that 1 November must be removed, because 1 November is smaller than 2 November, which is this one here. You can see the numbers are slightly different. So that's basically what we're doing. Then the start, and the start here, if you wonder what is the start, remember, the start we converted here. So we have this one. Then, and what we want to do as well, and then what we want is the following is end if the date is smaller or equal to the ending value, which is here. So now the end date has been done here as well. Alright, so that would mean that now the filter date should be working correctly. So what we can do right now is to test that. And what we want to do then is basically this. This should be the new date reassigned on basically on the labels here, the dates that we have here. So that's what we're going to do right now. So in here, we're going to say my chart, or how do we do that? We go from my chart to config, and from config, we go to data, and from data, we go to labels. So my chart config dot data dot labels equals filter date. Showing this, and then next what we say is my chart dot update. Of course, we're still not done with the data. However, this is the most important one. If I save this now and refresh, and now if I reset, or sorry, not reset, filter, you can see here now we have filtered this one beautifully to November. Of course, the values are still not matching. But if I select here now 3 November and let's filter again, there you are, 3 November showing here. And next what I want to do here is 7, filter again. There we are. So now we have this, but what we want to do, of course, is not only this, but also the date. Or sorry, not the date, the data that we want to cover here. Because the data here, or the data points, still needs to be filtered. So for that we have to do, and that has still some extra work, because this now is based on our item here. So to do this, I'm going to put it just here below, and this is now working on the data. So working on the, not dates, but data. So in here, let's look what we need. So we have here, first of all, we have the constant, which would be the start. Let's give it a start array. And the reason I'm going to give this a start array, what I really want to do here is, if we have now the converted date here that's showing the new array, what we also should have is then the value that you need to search where it is, so we can remove whatever data is matching with that. Because remember, these two are directly correlated with each other. If we show this, it would mean that number 18 needs to be removed, because right now number 18 is always being shown here, and that should not be, because like 3 November should be equal to 6. So if we scroll down here, we have to start working on that. So that's what we're going to do here. For that, we're going to grab the converted date, not the filtered dates. And the reason why, the converted date consists of all of the dates, every date that we need. And the filtered date already has filtered out everything. So very important here. So what we're going to say here, in the converted date, we want to say index of, to figure out the exact position of that item. And then we say here, we're going to get the filter dates. I'm going to grab this. But what I want then here, of course, is to figure out what is the 0 position here. So what I'm really doing here is, I want to get the first value of the array, which would be whatever we selected here, would be this. And it could even be, I guess, the starting, doesn't matter, it's one or the other, what you want. And once I get this, then I can figure out where would this be in the array originally. In the original array, where would it be positioned? Alright, so once I do this, let's do a console log here first. And let's grab this start array and put it in here. So if I save this, refresh, you can see here the starting date is now on 2 November. If I do here filter, you can see 2 November is here, and it is correctly being indicated the position is 1. Why is it 1? Remember, if I refresh here, arrays start at 0. So this is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So now let's filter number 1. So then number 3 or 3 November should be number 2. Filter, there you are. And we can do the same here. Let's go to, oh, we're not allowed to select anything else more. If I filter again here, number 1 equals 0. So now we have the proper filtering of this. So we have the first one that we're going to do. Then of course, is the next one would be the end array, the end value. And the end value here, you can just say end array, and maybe we could even fine tune it here, but for now that's alright. So what will be the end, or how will we get the end value here? Because we might not know what is the length. Right now we have this one here. This could be anything, oh sorry, the filtering here. The end value here can be easily calculated by just saying array length. So if you want to get the last value of the array, we're going to say here filter dates. And then when you say here filter dates dot length -1. Why -1? Because the index starts at counting at 0. So meaning that the last value is 6. Or in our case it's 6, even though there are 7 items in there. Index the 7th item would be called index 6. This is very important understanding arrays. Zero-based counting. Alright. So we have this now. Let's save this now. And then what I want to do here is to grab this here, save that. Refresh here, and then let's filter. So now you can see here it grabs number 4, which is correct because 1 November is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. If I move this to the 7th of November, filter, you can see that is value number 6. Beautiful. So this works nicely now. So the next thing what we can do here is the following. Let's do it like that. So now we can start to work on it by creating a new filter for our data points. But for this, I'm not allowed, as what we did previously, we're not allowed to adjust the original array. If we do that, we will have future problems with filtering, or if you re-filter again, it will remove certain values. So what we need to do is to duplicate that array again. How do we do it? So luckily there's in Chartjs, or so not in Chartjs, in JavaScript there's an easy way to do it. We say here const, and then let's say here copy, I'll just give it copy data points equals. We're going to use here a quick trick, is ES6. So we say triple dots, which is the rest operator, and then we grab here the name of the array that we want to duplicate, which is the data points. So basically here it would just say just exactly duplicate this specific data points. Because of the triple dot, it will say duplication. So now once we have this, what we need to do here is now start to remove the certain values from that array. So we're going to use here splice, and because of splice will modify this specific array here. That's why we had to duplicate the array, or else it will modify the original array. So we say here copy data points dot splice, and then here this is very important. We're not going to work with by filtering or removing first the beginning, because if we do this, the array order has been changed. So we must first remove the end values, and then we can do the beginning values. Makes sense? If not, the array index numbering is different than what we originally had. Very important here to understand that. So we're going to say here the following. We say here end array. So we're going to grab the end array here. Then we say +1, meaning because this is just an index, it will show us where will it start. Where do I want to start? I want to start at the end array +1. So it's not the end array that I want to remove, but the one after the end array. Makes sense, because if we say filtering from this to, let's say, 5 November, you want to still make sure that 5 November is visual. If you will just only do this without the +1, 5 November will be removed as well. So I don't want that. I want to keep it as well. Comma. And then what we're going to do here, we're going to say here, basically, here you can increase the length to anything, because we don't know what the original length. Sometimes you might have one with 100 or 1,000 different data points. So we're going to say here the following: filter data or filter dates dot length, and then so get whatever is there in the future or whatever it is. It keeps on expanding infinity and remove everything afterwards. So there we have the first one. So once we do this, you will see now our console log. All right, you can see this is a quite long video, not expected to be that long, but important one. Save this, refresh. If I now do here filter, you can see now it starts to already do correctly, of course, but it still has certain items here at the beginning, but the ending has been removed. So if I do this one and we do filter, you can see here now it grabs this. All right, so this is all fine. Still not done because we need to, of course, remove the 1 here, 1 November. And this is number 18 was equal to 1 November. So that's what we still need to do. So what we can play around now is the following. And yeah, if you understand, that's why we have this one here that shows this, or else number 4 or 4 November will be removed here. So what we're going to do now is exactly the same, but now we can do the front point of the starting point of our array. So we say copy data points, and then we say here splice. But now what we want to splice is we start at 0 as default, and then we say here comma start array. Start array, which is of course this one here. So why now start array? So we say here the starting point will be 0, it's the beginning of the array, and remove everything until we hit the starting array. So it could be 1, but if it's 0, it removes nothing. It removes 0, and then how many it needs to remove? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 0. Because our index might be 0. So this is very useful. So once we have this, we can save this, and then what I want to do here is a console log. Not a console log, but I want to also now start to assign this one here. So how do we do this? Well, we go to my chart, or from my chart, config, from config to data, and from data we go to data sets, which is an index, means data set 0, and then we say data here. So we assign that one here. So let's do that one. My chart dot config dot data sets 0, and then we say here the following. This will be data set 0, then data equals that. So am I correct? Data equals data sets data. All right, that is correct. Equals the copy data points. Save this, refresh. So now we have this here, and now what we're going to do here is let's filter this. All right, that looks very nice. November equals 6. Am I correct? November equals 6. 3 November is 6. 4 is 9, and 5 November equals 12. So we can see here, this is 9 and this is 12. So if I go here back to 1, this should be 18. There we are, 18. If I go to 2, we should have here, that is 12. There we are. Oh, sorry, that one is of course here because now 1 has been removed. So 2 November is here, 12, 6, 9, etc., etc. All right, so this looks very promising, and now it looks very nice. So the next thing what I want to do, which is the final item, is the reset button. So how do we reset this basically? Well, we can do it quite straightforward. All we need to do is the following. We're going to put here a function, and then what we can say here is the reset date. Reset date, and the reset date will be basically this here. So what we could do here for the reset date, because the reset date should be based on this array here. So we say here, let's update this again. Let's go back here. We just need to copy here a certain structure. What we need to do is here, of course, the update chart. That's number 1. And next what we will say here, basically the start and ending point. So what we can do here, let's make that one right now. Very straightforward. Is let's see, we have the converted dates. I realize we could just get this one, not the dates, but the converted dates here, because they are already set correctly. And all we can do here is the following. We will say here we have this, and we need the 0 value, and then we need the other one here, which will be the converted date, but this converted date will be the length. So we say here dot length minus 1. You know now why minus 1? Because of the array zero-based calculation. So these are already things. So we can say here reset start. Let's make this a constant. And then we say here reset end. And when I look at it, I realize that this doesn't make any sense at all. Sorry. And the reason why is we can just get the converted dates. That makes sense. Makes a lot more sense. We can just say here, let's go back here to the, where is that? What we want to do is we want to reassign it. So we go from my chart, and then we go to, from my chart to config, to data, and then we say labels. which makes far more sense what I'm doing. I don't understand what happened. I guess blacked out or something. Doesn't matter. So we're going to say here the following. We say here my chart dot config dot data dot labels equal this here, which is our array that we have. And then we have another one here, but then specifically like this one here. You just copy this because that's the data. We want to reset the data as well. How do we reset the data? This is the way how we reset it. Well, we just get the original data here, which is the data points. We do this, put it in there, save that, refresh. So now if we have this date here, let's select this, filter. All right, reset. And I'll do another filter, reset. Let's change that to 1. Filter, reset. Change this to 4, filter, and reset. All right. So basically, this is the way how you work really with dates correctly. And we've built here something that was quite a while. However, very important to understand, and this really covers as well the question that I had before as well. How do we filter dates correctly? This is the way to do it in Chartjs. So if you like this video, I'm going to highly recommend you another video that can be also quite interesting, which is how to make clickable group columns in the X scale in Chartjs, where you can, for example, expand dates or month into dates, and from dates into days, etc., etc. You could go very deep in here, or weeks, days, quarters, etc., etc. Very interesting, highly recommendable video to watch as well.